Hello you guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Jamila, your what's good. You guys, I didn't post last week, so I missed you guys. How's everyone doing? How was Eid? To all my Muslims, Eid Mubarak. The way time is flying is actually so scary. I feel like Ramadan literally started yesterday and we're already celebrating Eid. Today, I'm going to be telling you guys things I've learned in my 25 years of living. These are things that I have learned throughout my early 20s and things that I wish people told me. Take all of the things that I say with a grain of salt because these are things that I learned from my experiences, so it might not apply to everyone. So the first thing I wish I knew is that when you start healing, the hard days feel so bad because you're not always in a state of dysfunction. Okay, this might not make sense, so let me cook. So before you start healing, you're always in a state of dysfunction. But when you start healing, your baseline is no longer a constant state of sadness or worry or anxiety, which means that most days you feel good, right? But we're all human, so we all experience days that are hard or days that we feel off. And because your baseline is no longer those hard days, it becomes so much harder to cope when you experience those hard days because you're not always working on your coping mechanisms and you're not always utilizing them. Like, you get comfortable with the good days, so when the bad days come, you're just like, wait, what is going on? But I learned that this is actually a good sign, and it shows that you are healing and that you're experiencing those hard days less and less and less, which means that, sometimes it might be a little bit hard when you experience them, but I'm saying I'll take that than always being in a state of dysfunction. I literally just recorded a bunch of stuff and realized that my mic was off, bro. The second thing that I wish I knew is that things don't change unless you do. And what I mean by this is that you need to be able to make the sacrifices and changes that you need to make to reach the places that you need to get to. And if you're not willing to take those steps, then you'll never be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in life. I think it's also very important to note that there's literally nobody that's going to come and save us. So unless we make these changes, then we're going to be stuck in our current circumstances. So you either have to accept that or you have to be willing to make the sacrifices that you need to make to get to the places that you want to get to. The third thing is so important, especially if you're anything like me and you are externally influenced, but it is that the people you surround yourself affect you more than you know. I am not only an externally influenced person, I am also very stubborn. So I spent a big chunk of my early 20s telling myself that every decision I've ever made was because I wanted to and that it had nothing to do with the people that I was surrounded by. But now, after reflecting, I could tell you that a lot of the decisions that I made when I was younger was to do with the people that I was surrounded by. And this isn't to push blame or to not take accountability for the things that I did, but more so to say that if you are in a community that normalizes certain behaviors or certain habits, then those things will also become normal for you. So be very mindful of the people you surround yourself with, and also surround yourself with people that live the life that you want to live. The fourth thing that I wish I knew is that you can recreate yourself as many times as you want to. You are not stuck. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you're stuck. You can recreate yourself literally every single day. You could wake up today and decide that you want to learn Arabic, and then you could wake up tomorrow and decide that, you know what, I want to be Bob the Builder. You could literally do everything that you set your mind to. The only limitations that you have are those that you set yourself. So if you believe that you could do something, then you can. The next thing that I wish I knew is that you have to honor your journey. And this means that you have to do things that align with you and your values and your morals. It is raining outside, so if you guys can hear that, I'm sorry. It literally just started raining. When you guys think about it, there's a reason why we were born at this time and why we have the families that we have, and there's a reason why we are from the ethnicities that we're from, the countries that we're from. Everything about us was done intentionally, right? So if you don't honor your journey and do the things that you're always destined to do, it's not only a disservice to you, but it's also a disservice to your community. I feel like if people don't honor their journey and follow the rabbit to get to where they need to get to, then there's a version of themselves that they will never get to experience and that the world will never get to experience. This is why I think it's so important that people do the things that genuinely align with them, because that is the only way they will be able to unlock their full potential. The next thing that I wish I knew is that we need Allah. Allah does not need us. I feel like I was very humbled in my early 20s and I had to learn this the hard way. I think growing up, I felt like when I was told, oh, Jamila, pray, or Jamila, you need to read the Quran, sometimes I felt like I was doing it because Allah needed me to do it rather than for myself. But the older that I got, I realized that I pray not because Allah needs me to pray or because he loses anything if I don't pray, but it's actually for me. I lose something if I don't pray, and I I gain something if I pray. The next thing I wish I knew is that you need to learn about Islam and fall in love with it on your own. Throughout the years, I definitely had a lot of religious trauma that I had picked up from different family members, from different members of the community, and I feel like that tarnished my relationship with Islam and Allah. But in my early 20s, I embarked on a journey to reconnect with Islam and reconnect with Allah on my own and according to my terms, and I feel like that was probably one of the best things I have ever done. I feel like I was able to really fall in love with Islam and Allah, and I was able to unlearn a lot of the things that I was taught that had nothing to do with Islam and were purely cultural, which really aided in my connection to Allah and which helped me understand Islam more. The ninth thing I wish I knew is to not do things out of boredom. I wish I knew this a long time ago, because some of the things that I did out of boredom, I wish I knew this a long time ago because a lot of things I did out of boredom either resulted in me hurting people, it resulted in me getting into situations that I felt like I had completely outgrown. It also resulted in me being friends or, talking to guys that I did not even see a future with. And it was purely done for the plot or for entertainment. But I feel like when you're younger, you don't realize that everything that you do has consequences. Sometimes I wasn't even equipped to handle the consequences of some of the things I did when I was bored. So definitely keep that in mind if you are in your early 20s. The next thing I wish I knew in my early 20s is how to be alone. Honestly, learning how to be alone is one of the most liberating feelings ever. And I highly recommend. And this is because when you learn how to be alone and you love your own company, you're no longer required to tolerate certain situations or certain people just because you always need company. Ever since I learned how to be alone, I will say that this is probably the most peaceful my life has been. Peaceful does sometimes mean boring, but I will take that. I'll take that any day. The next thing I wish I knew is how important family is. If you have a family that care about you, that love you and want to connect with you, make sure that you also put an effort to keep your family in your life. I think in our early 20s, we get carried away with having friends and traveling and having our own experiences that we neglect our family members. But as somebody who's a little bit older, I could say that your family members are truly some of the most important people in your life, especially as you get older and life becomes a little bit more difficult and you need stability and support. I feel like these are the times where you lean on your family, so make sure that you're developing and working on these relationships early on. This one is so important, especially if you're a woman. Do not center your life around men. I'm gonna say it again for the people in the back. Do not center your life around men. I'm not gonna lie, in my early 20s, there were a lot of times where I would do things with men in mind. For example, I would literally get ready for an event. I'll be like, what if I meet my husband? But as I got older, I realized that there's so much more to life than finding a husband, getting married. Life does not revolve around men. And the second you free yourself, that is when you realize how abundant life is and how abundant this world is. So do not limit yourself into thinking that your early 20s is for you to find your husband or whatever. There's so much more to life than that. The next thing I wish I knew is how amazing wearing the hijab would be. This is something I was very hesitant about because I had lived 23 years of my life without wearing the hijab, so I had a lot of mixed feelings. But after wearing the hijab for a little more than 2 years, I will say that it has been one of the best decisions I have ever made. And if you are considering wearing it, then I highly recommend. The next thing I wish I knew is how important it is to learn how to have heavy or uncomfortable conversations. I feel like a lot of situations I got into in my early 20s could have been avoided had I not been avoiding conflict. A lot of times I was very uncomfortable getting into confrontational situations, so I wouldn't say anything. And over time, I would either just resent the person or I would act in a way that doesn't really align with who I am. And I feel like all of that could have been avoided had I learned how to have those heavy, uncomfortable conversations. The next thing I wish I knew is to always do things with good intentions and always do things expecting nothing in return. I feel like there were a lot of times in my early 20s where I did things for people expecting that same thing in return, whether that be love or support. And sometimes people just do not have the capacity to give that back to you. So I was left feeling disappointed or I was left resenting the person. My older sister is the one that kind of pieced this together for me when I was in college. I remember I had a conversation with her in my dorm room one day and she gave me a perspective. She told me that whatever I do for people has to be because of the type of person I am and it cannot be transactional in any way. This kind of lines up with what I just said, but the next thing I wish I knew is to not expect yourself in other people. You will literally be disappointed. You are your own person, and it's because of your experiences and values and the way you were brought up that you are the person that you are. So do not think that the person that you are or the level of love and support and kindness that you show people will be reciprocated. Make sure the reason as to why you are the person that you are is intrinsically motivated and has nothing to do with the people that you're around or the way people treat you, because like I said, you will be left disappointed. The next thing I wish I knew is how important it is to learn about yourself, because if you don't know who you are, then you'll never be able to do the work you're put on this earth to do. The next thing I wish I knew is how important self-care is. And for me, it is consistently doing the little things that bring me joy. One time I was going through a difficult patch and I would make myself hot cocoa every single night, and it was honestly one of the things that was keeping me afloat. There was also a time where I was going through it and I would get myself one thing every single day. At the end of the day, it could be something that cost $1, it could be something that cost a little bit more, and again, I had something to look forward to every single day. There have been times where I leaned into skincare or watching my favorite shows every day. Self-care comes in all shapes and sizes, but I think it's so important to do at least one thing every single day for yourself. The next thing I wish I knew is to never make decisions when I'm desperate. There's an analogy that just makes so much sense to me. Making decisions when you're desperate is like going to the grocery store when you're very hungry. We've literally all been there. We know how that ends. This could be decisions that you make about marriage, about friends, about relationships, about work, about school. I think it's also very important to distinguish between having desire for things and having desperation. You can have desire for things without feeling like you need to compromise on who you are, your values, and what aligns with you to get the things that you want. I think that is the point where it turns from desire to desperation. The next thing I wish I knew is how important friends are. I feel like friends are able to fill a part of you that family are not. From my experience, my friends have been able to bring out the carefree version of me, and that's something that I really appreciate. And I've noticed that, different relationships that you have in your life, which is why I think it's very important that we not only have family members that we're close with, but also friends. The next thing I wish I knew in my early 20s is to not get fixated on how I feel. There were many times in my early 20s where I was focusing on the way I felt instead of acknowledging and even commending the way I was dealing with certain situations. For example, let's say that I was in a toxic situationship with a guy and I felt like the relationship no longer served me, so I ended things. And let's say that when I ended things with him, it made me feel terrible and I was very sad and I felt like the world was about to end. There were many situations in my early 20s where I would focus on how I felt rather than the good thing that I was doing. So in this situation, I would focus on the sadness and the heaviness that I was feeling rather than being proud of myself for leaving a toxic situation. All of this is to say that we are human and we will experience hardship and we will experience heavy feelings, but sometimes these feelings don't mean that we're not headed in the right direction. They don't mean that we are not doing the work that needs to be done. And these heavy feelings should not take away from the amazing work that we are doing to level up. The next thing I wish I knew is to always be kind to people regardless of how people treat you. I think it's very important to stay true to who you are and to always keep reaffirming your beliefs that you're a good person rather than to prove a point that you could match a person's energy or that, people shouldn't mess with you or whatever. I feel like also when you're a good person, what goes around always comes back around, and the good energy that you put out in the world is the good energy that you will be receiving. This is literally my second time filming this part of the video because the first time I filmed it, my camera died, and then the second part, for some reason, I watched the footage and I'm like moving in slow motion. You can't hear nothing. But anyways, the next thing that I learned is to never take anything personally. If a person disrespects you, don't take it personally. If a person is jealous of you, don't take it personally. If a person even tries to, tussle, don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the person. When they say people will only meet you as far as they have met themselves, that is so true. Whatever people do, it's a reflection of where they are on their journey, and it literally has nothing to do with you. So do not take anything personally. And I feel like the sooner you learn this and the sooner you understand that the things people do have nothing to do with you, the more liberated you will be. Learning this made me less reactive when people would do certain things, and it also encouraged me to give them grace because I understood that it had to do something with what they were going through and nothing to do with me. The last tip that I have is to always do things with future you in mind. There have been so many things that past me did that I am so grateful for, and had the older version of me not made those sacrifices, then I would not be able to reap the benefits benefits that I am currently reaping. Honestly, if I could go back in time and meet the older version of me, I would give her the biggest hug ever and give her the biggest forehead kiss, because I am so proud of her and everything that she did, and I'm so grateful that she made the sacrifices that she did, because had she not, I would not be the person that I am today. With this in mind, I also think about the future version of me looking back at who I am today and feeling proud and grateful for the sacrifices that I made with her in mind. I think another thing that also helped me understand this better is something that my dad always says. He always tells me that the future version of myself might not have the resources that I have today, so it's very important that I utilize the things that I have today with future me in mind. For example, today I am privileged enough to have my health, to have time, to live in a country that's safe, and these are things that I might not have in the future. So if I don't do things with future me in mind, I might be setting up myself for failure. And this isn't to scare you guys or anything, it's just something to keep in mind. This also ties in with a lot of things Islam teaches us, because Islam encourages us to always focus on delayed gratification and to make sacrifices today so we can reap the benefits of those sacrifices in the future. Anyways, you guys, if you guys have watched this far into the video, I am so grateful and I love you guys so much. I will be seeing you guys next week in my next video. This week's video was a little bit more serious, but you know, I'm trying to get y'all to see all sides of me. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe. I love you guys so much. Inshallah, I'm going to see you guys next week. Bye, you guys.